Today's video is an in-depth guide on how to flip PCs. Whether you're doing it just for some extra money or you just want to have some fun building and selling PCs, this guide will cover everything that you need to know to get started and flip PCs efficiently. I've been flipping PCs for the past 2 years now, and I got a lot of stuff to share. So if you want to ask me any questions, join this channel as a tier 2 member or above and join our Discord, and you can ask me personally there. Now before we get started, here's a short list of things that you should familiarize yourself with. Basic PC part terms, models and brands, relative performance, and prices of parts are things that you'll learn as you begin to flip PCs. Keep in mind that most people buying PCs don't know much about tech and they don't know much about specs. The main things that they will be looking for are the CPU, the GPU, if there's enough storage for the games that they want, and how the PC looks. If you didn't catch all that information, that's okay. I've got a companion Google Doc for this video in the description that has a lot of the information in this video. You should also consider your budget. Most of the buyers tend to be looking for low-end to mid-range gaming PCs, so targeting these markets will tend to have the highest success rates. I like to have a loose budget that varies based on the deals that I find, which tends to be around $300 to $400 currently. If you're unsure on what budget to set for yourself, I would recommend setting a similar budget. Please keep in mind that PC flipping is not a guaranteed profit, so you should do some market research beforehand to see if there is a market for PCs in your local area. There are also some slight startup costs. It's helpful to have a good stock of PC power cables, thermal paste, screws for PC building, and zip ties, all of which you can find on eBay in bulk. If you're buying a case new, it will come with a bag of screws and zip ties, so you don't need to buy those. And now it begins the hunt for used PC part deals. There are a lot of places to look for deals such as Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, local classifieds, OfferUp, Mercari, and Gumtree, but personally I like to use the first two. When finding parts, try to prioritize deals that offer multiple parts that you want. The most common example of this is with a CPU, motherboard, RAM, and cooler. In general, you should set aside around 1/4 to 1/3 of your budget for the GPU and around 1/3 to 2/5 of the budget for the CPU, motherboard, RAM, and cooler combined. In this next section, please check the Google spreadsheet in the description for the most up-to-date information on market prices for various parts. I'll be referencing stuff in this sheet a lot, so make sure to check that out. Let's start with CPUs. Ryzen tends to be the most popular among consumers, followed by i7 and then i5. Obviously, people are going to trend towards the newer hardware, but it usually depends on prices. For example, currently all of the newer GPUs are extremely overpriced, so looking at older GPUs is a better idea. Personally, I like to find Ryzen 1st generation, i5 Devil's Canyon, and 3rd to 4th generation i7 CPUs. The reason being, a lot of people are upgrading from these old systems and tend to sell them in combos with the CPU, motherboard, RAM, and cooler. For motherboards and coolers, most consumers don't care about a fancy motherboard or an expensive motherboard. Most consumers also don't care about the cooler's performance, but rather how it looks. In some cases, it's easier to buy the motherboard separate from the CPU in the case of LGA 1151 and AM4 CPUs. RAM is pretty straightforward. You should have at least 16 GB of RAM. Most people don't know much about RAM specs, so just the capacity matters in this case. You should spend a maximum of $40 to $50 for a 16 GB kit of RAM, DDR3 and DDR4. Now originally, I had a list of prices for GPUs, but since we've entered the pandemic, it's kind of a toss-up on how much you're going to spend on GPU. Here are the GPUs that you should be looking for. This list includes most GPUs HD 7000 series and above, and GTX 700 series and above. For information on storage, power supplies, cases, and fans, please check the spreadsheet. Another thing that you can add to your PC is some form of RGB, whether it be through the cooler, the case, or just the actual lights themselves. In my experience, RGB PCs tend to sell better than non-RGB PCs, as the bright colors help your PC stand out when you eventually put it out on the market. eBay tends to be the most reliable, but also has some of the highest prices, so reserve that only for very specific parts. Generally, almost all of the deals that you're going to be finding are going to be local deals. To protect yourself, make sure you ask for some forms of verification. For things such as CPU combos, ask for a picture of the specs within the BIOS or the specs in Windows. For GPUs, you can ask for a GPU-Z picture or a picture of the GPU running a game or a benchmark. Once you found a PC part to buy, try to negotiate on the price, especially if it's above your budget for the part. A common trick is to come in with a low offer, to which they'll usually either decline it or counter offer. You can then offer an amount in between, and then they'll usually say yes or respond with the lowest price that they're willing to do. When you make your offers, you can say things like you'll meet them today or you have cash in hand to assure them that you're a legitimate buyer. When you're actually meeting up with them to buy the parts, ask if you can check out the parts, verbally confirm that there's nothing wrong with it, then confirm the asking price and finish the exchange. Now, keeping track of your parts and their prices is really important, especially if you're building multiple PCs at once. In the description, I have a template for a spreadsheet to track your parts. The first page is for keeping track of all parts that you purchase, including any information about the parts and the price. The second page is for keeping track of the PCs that you sell, the parts in them, and the prices of each part. The total cost is added up at the bottom, and there's space for a lot of PCs in the spreadsheet. Again, that's linked in the description below. Then we're on to building the PC. When you're building the PC, make it look pretty. People like to buy nice looking PCs, so make sure to clean parts with dust on them, wash the case if it's used, take off any stickers, and make it look like it's new. Make sure to also cable manage properly, route all your cables, zip tie where necessary, and hide the cables away from the front of the PC. You should also repaste the CPU and the GPU. Testing the PC is not necessary, but I would still highly recommend doing it. A common CPU benchmark is Cinebench R23, and you can also test various games. Be sure to test a variety of games such as GTA 5, Fortnite, Apex Legends, COD games, Minecraft, CSGO, League of Legends, and Valorant. Record down FPS numbers and settings so you can include them later on your listing. If you're doing this across multiple PCs, dedicate one drive as your testing drive so that you only have to download games once. Make sure to use Display Driver Uninstaller to uninstall drivers before installing drivers for a new GPU in a new system, however. And now it's time to market your PC. Let's start with the price. Look around on sites that you're going to sell on and pick a price based on other similarly spec'd PCs. You should be looking for around 15 to 35% margins depending on how much you paid for the parts. When listing your PC, make sure to take high quality pictures and good lighting, at least one picture with the panel on and at least one without the panel on. In your title, include the name of the CPU and the GPU. Write out the full specs of the PC in the description and include the benchmark numbers from earlier. If you do get potential buyers, respond to them professionally, use full sentences with no abbreviations, and be open to answering questions and make sure to answer in detail. Don't be afraid to follow up with potential customers by giving them a friendly reminder as well. Some buyers will ask for verification that the PC runs, so ask them if a video of the PC booting up will work. They might ask to see if it works in person, but I prefer to meet in a public place where there isn't always a place to test it. You should also include a PC power cable and a fresh install of Windows with the PC, since most people don't have those. And now that you have a buyer, that's great. Once you have agreed on a meetup time and a location, arrive a few minutes early. Be prepared to answer some last-minute questions such as the specs, upgradability, and some may ask to see the inside of the PC. If the buyer tries to negotiate on the price, politely decline. Any negotiation should happen before the sale and not during the sale. Keep the PC in your possession until they have given you the cash, thank them, and make sure to count the money too. Cash is generally the best option, but you could use other forms of payment such as Venmo or Cash App if you feel comfortable doing so. Afterwards, let them know that you're happy to help with any issues or questions that they have about the PC. Now, recently, I've begun to give customers a small slip of paper that contains some information about the PC and steps to set it up. This is helpful because a lot of people don't know about this information, so it helps to include that with the PC. If you want a template of it, I will leave it linked in the description below. And that's the process of flipping a PC. I actually have a video where I flipped a PC in 48 hours, so if you want to check that out, I will leave that linked in the description below, as well as the link to my Discord. That's all. Stay safe. See you next time.